Good afternoon. We are now starting up our next session of our board meeting for Tuesday, June 18. And when we last were meeting, we were talking about various motions on the amended motions to amend the main motion on our budget. And I do see a large number of people here from our friends in Western Lane County. And I'm wondering, Ms. Moody, what's your availability to
Chair Sorensen.
hang around? And maybe we could take their item while they're here.
Yeah. Chair Sorensen, if it helps you with your meeting management, I was going to ask the second's permission to withdraw my last budget motion.
Okay.
I think there's a more, after speaking with Mr. Kyler by text and Ms. Moody, I think there's a more appropriate way to send the message I want to send.
Okay.
I'll accept that.
Very good. Okay, so
Sign me up.
I'd just like to get the perspective of the commissioners on the workload here. And specifically, I wanted to ask if Ms. Moody, if you're going to run out the door or if you're available later in the day. So we might do our work session with the folks from Florence here or Western Lane County.
We're in the middle of a motion.
Yeah,
so we
yeah.
should probably finish that.
Okay, all right.
All we need is one motion to approve the budget.
Okay, so why don't we go ahead then with the budget, finish that up, then we'll go to our work session on the local access roads, which I know you guys are all waiting for patiently. So we'll finish up on the budget, and so at this time, we'll go back to item 7, the order and resolution 19-06-18-02. There is a motion to approve that. All motions to amend have been dealt with. Are there any other motions to amend the budget as presented and modified by last week's board meeting and modified, I guess not modified by today's vote on the amended motion? Any other motions?
Discussion to the main motion.
Okay.
I just would like to state that I'm going to vote in favor of the budget adoption, knowing that I highly object to the removal of funding for the Association of ONC Counties, and I don't want to hold the rest of the budget hostage over that. There are too many good things in this budget that Mr. Mokrajewski covered this morning, and I won't make people wait while I list those good things and the good work we've done over the last 8 years to recover from when the Secretary of State thought we were actually going to go bankrupt as a county. So it's just a continuation of that hard financial work over the last 8 years, and I just want to say that I will be voting yes, but knowing that there's a part of me that would vote no almost just over the issue of the AOCC.
Any other comments? Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one comment and a thank you. And I'm going to reflect on last year's budget where, Mr. Mokrajewski, you introduced $2 million for a housing improvement plan for grants for low-income housing throughout the county, which was very successful. You found $2 million from a one-time only source, and you made it happen. Thank you. This year, to more or less mirror that, an item that's been high on the top of my list is beginning to fund a crisis center, an alternate place for arrested individuals or individuals in crisis to be taken by usually one of the police departments to a crisis center to find appropriate services instead of going to the jail. $1 million to get that thing started. Thank you very much. You find things in ways that they're very imaginative and really get to the core of the urgent needs in the community. Thank you very much.
Any other comments from commissioners? Okay, I just wanted to ask a few questions about the tax part of the resolution, and maybe Mr. Mokrajewski or Ms. Moody, you can answer these. We have comparable counties in Oregon to Lane County, and we kind of talk about the ones that are a little further out from us of our 5 comparables, like maybe Jackson County or Washington County, and then kind of a little closer in would be maybe counties like Marion County and Clackamas County. And I know that, Mr. Mokrajewski, you've mentioned this maybe in your first presentation about where we are as not quite the same as Marion County, because there's differences in land area, but they have a big city, Salem, they have another big city near them, Kaiser, and they have a comparable population to us, both the cities and the county. And what is their tax base that they levy on versus what our rate of taxes is that's contained in this budget?
I was trying to pull up this slide that Commissioner Burney had asked me about, and I said, but it's not coming up. Oh, here it is. So let me just see if I can get.
Sorry to blindside you with
No,
this.
that's okay.
You made this presentation
being-
very early in the process and had that nice $3.07.
I know, I wish we would have it up here on the screen. I didn't think to do that. So Lane County, to answer your question, Commissioner, Lane County is the 7th lowest permanent property tax rate of the 36 counties in Oregon. The 6 that are below us are Josephine County, Curry County, Coos, Douglas, Lynn, and Deschutes. So the only comparable, we typically look at 5 comparable county, Washington, Clackamas, Jackson, Marion, and Deschutes. Deschutes is $1.28. Lane County is $1.28. We're actually the same as Deschutes. They also have two public safety districts where their sheriff's office, patrol, DA, and their jail are funded separate from their permanent property tax rate. Now, we have a 55-cent levy on top of our $1.28 that helps fund jail beds, but we are the 7th lowest permanent property tax rate of all counties in the state, and the 3rd lowest when you look at all local revenue collected by the 36 counties. We're the 3rd lowest.
And so I think part of why we're proud of this budget, whether there are things in it or not in it that we have problems with, we're pretty proud of the fact that we are, of the comparable counties, we're the lowest funded county in the state and of our comparables. And one of the things we're really trying to do here is to do the very best with the property tax dollar that we receive. And so the power to raise our permanent rate is taken away from cities and counties by a constitutional amendment that the voters of Oregon passed. So we can't change our permanent rate. We can have these 5-year levies at times, but we can't change the permanent rate. So our permanent rate is being levied in this budget. And I think it's appropriate for the public to be reminded that we are one of the lowest funded counties among the comparable counties, and even among the lowest in the whole state. So I just wanted to bring that out and thank you for all your hard work on that. Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And while we cannot change our permanent rate based upon the property tax limitation, why are we so low? Why did our permanent rate get set so low, the 7th lowest?
It's a question.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, well, what we oftentimes talk about is we have in most of the timber counties have artificially low property tax rates because they, for so long, relied on federal funding from the large amount of federal forests in those counties. And then when property tax caps went into effect in the mid-1990s that restricted county governments from increasing their permanent rates, it was sort of this perfect storm. As that federal forest funding declined, the Secure Rural Schools funding, you've seen that chart, 91% reduction over the course of the past 18 or 19 years. We used to receive $40 million per year into the road fund and general fund. We received about $4 to $5 million between those. So 90% reduction in that period of time.
So Measure 5 and then 4750, which I was on the school board for 5, and 4750 I was on the city council. Those created the permanent tax rate that is unchangeable, but was 7th lowest because we were so highly dependent upon the timber property, the timber harvest from the property that's owned by the federal government inside the county. And about what percentage? About 50% of the county is federal?
I think closer to 60%.
Close to 60% of the county is owned by the federal government. Okay, thank you. Just wanted a reminder on that.
Anything further on the budget before we take our vote on adopting the budget? Okay, so seeing no further requests, we'll take a vote. All those in favor of the budget resolution, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed to the budget resolution, say no. And the vote is 5-0. All commissioners voting in favor of the budget resolution. Ms. Moody, this caps 6 months of hard work preparing the budget for presentation for the budget proposal, working through the budget committee and then the budget approval, and then finally today's budget adoption. I just want to not only thank you, but the hundreds of people in the county that play a role in the budget, and really every day is budget day because we worked on the supplemental budget for the last quarter today and approved the budget starting July 1st today. And I know for you, all this is at least 3 weeks of preparation for these board meetings. So thank you so much for your great work.
Thanks.
And thank you, taxpayers, for helping to fund this work that we do for you. Okay, we're ready to call up Ms. Kepler and Ms. Vartanian. This is item 15A. We set this up to be a 1-hour work session on local access roads. And with us to sort of start off the work session and take approximately 15 minutes of presentation will be Peggy Kepler, Lane County Engineer, and Sasha Vartanian, Transportation Planning Supervisor. And we set this up for you to make your report and whatever comments you want to make, and then the board will take an estimated 45 minutes for questions. And thank you very much for both being here, and please proceed.
Thank you, Chair Sorensen and Commissioners. So again, this is intended as a work session to continue to the discussion on LARs that started on, well, has been an ongoing discussion, but we held the first work session on March 12th of this year. At that meeting, you directed staff to inventory Lane County's existing local access roads, research policy solutions for treatment of current local access roads and future local access roads. I'll refer to them as LARs from here on out. And you asked that the Lane County Transportation Advisory Committee, the TRAC, develop a recommendation for the board on LAR policy changes. So the following presentation will provide you with the progress report to date on these 3 items, and I ask if it's okay with you that we hold the discussion till the end. And we'll, at that point, ask you for your initial feedback on the policy questions posed and any further direction you'd like to provide to us. So, this is the lengthy definition of what a local access road is in Chapter 15. A public road that is not a county road, state highway, or federal road pursuant to ORS 368, the county and its officers, employees, and/or agents is not liable for failure to improve LARs and is not liable to keep LARs in repair. The county shall spend county monies on LARs only if it determines that the work is an emergency or if, and I will save you the rest of the description, but it's complicated. I think that's the point I wanted to make. And why has it become an issue in this county? They're confusing for fronting property owners. Maintenance responsibility is not always understood. And unlike a private road, LARs are still public roads dedicated to the public good. So some LARs are poorly maintained and create safety issues, and remedying those issues can be cost prohibitive, as you've heard in our previous updates. So what it really boils down to, there's really, when you think about the use of automobiles and vehicular traffic on roads, there's really 2 main purposes for roads: to carry traffic and to provide access to local properties. And LARs primarily fall into that second category, and I think one of the issues we're trying to address with their inventory is, when does an LAR all of a sudden become more of a traffic carrying road, and when does it need to be considered to take it into the county road system? I've done some initial research, and I wanted to give you a little anecdote. Of course, all counties in Oregon struggle with this issue. I was talking to the Public Works Director in Deschutes County, and he said, you know what? we don't quite have the same issue of people not understanding their maintenance responsibilities. And I said, really? How did you do that? And he said, well, we have snow. So you figure it out really quickly when you have 2 feet of snow on your road and no one else is plowing it for you. So our initial list of items to inventory for every individual local access road is presented here. The items in green are items we've already gathered through our GIS and other existing information, and the items in black are items we're going to need to gather both with a field investigation and other research. We believe an inventory is really essential for 2 reasons: to know the full extent of the condition of LARs in Lane County, and to inform if and what the threshold should be for an LAR to be accepted into the county road system. So we have a lot of work ahead of us, and I do want to point out that the physical inventory is going to be time-consuming, and the majority of it will start this fall. As you know, many of our crews are very busy with road construction and maintenance projects. We also do our average daily traffic counts for county roads during the summer. So a lot of this information will start the gathering process this fall. What our initial inventory tells us is, and this is based on our GIS data, is that we have 123.8 miles of local access roads, and that breaks down into a total of 541 individual local access roads. That's a lot. 191 of them are partially within city urban growth boundaries, and the lengths of these LARs range from 0.006 miles all the way up to 3.14, and range from serving 0 to 70 individual parcels. So to break it down so you get a sense of how the lengths break up, the majority of them are really short. They're less than a quarter mile long, 379 of them are. And then there's a handful that are really long. There is an outlier, and I'll go to this next list. This is the top 10 longest LARs, and you'll notice there is kind of an outlier. There's a big gap at that last one, Good Pasture Road. The very end of it, before it turns into, I believe, BLM, is listed as a local access road, so 3.14 miles. And the rest are just around a mile in length, including, you'll notice, Collard Lake Road is on that list. In terms of parcels served, the majority of them serve less than 10 parcels, but then there are many, about 20 that serve 30 parcels or more. And so the top 10 list of parcels served, the highest is Stark Street, and I'll caveat, these do not include other LARs that connect to these LARs. These are just individual LARs, so you'll notice Collard Lake Road is also on this list. And the road itself only serves 50 parcels, but when you take into the whole consideration the whole road system, it's larger, which we can gather from our inventory. And then I wanted to give you a sense of the lengths in our individual cities as well. I call this out as an item because, as you probably already know, when an LAR becomes completely within city limits, so the properties all around it are annexed, it becomes a city street. I will flag for you that we are not, currently there are some examples we're seeing where this is not happening. And then this is my favorite part about the inventory so far. There are some very creative names, so I put it upon you to find some in the list better than these.
I know where ridiculous is.
Yeah. So in terms of the policy discussion, the following questions I'm going to walk through just represent our initial thoughts on the policy review and potential paths for policy change. They are not any form of a recommendation. And we plan to bring back to you at our next update based on further research and discussion with the track a proposal. So it really breaks down into two categories. Should we change how we treat existing LARs? And should we change if and how future LARs are created? For existing LARs, these are the main questions we're researching. Is there a point when an LAR should be taken into the county road system? And if so, what criteria is used to determine that? Does there need to be a consistent 50-foot right-of-way dedication? And how and when is the road brought up to county standards? Should we consider requiring facility permits for work performed on LARs? They currently are not required. Are there ways to incentivize fronting property owners on LARs to keep roads maintained? And do we want to treat LARs within city UGBs differently than LARs outside of UGBs? That one I can say probably. There's several funding options that we've been investigating. Special road districts, local improvement districts, and maintenance agreements. The main difference between special road districts and local improvement districts is really the way those improvements are financed. Special road districts are residents vote to establish a district which levies a property tax to fund maintenance. And in an LID, the construction cost of upgrading a road is done through property assessments with a long-term payment plan and relatively low interest rates. Maintenance agreements, we found an example where Curry County had done this in the past where if the 60% of the fronting property owners voted to have a maintenance agreement and pay for the materials, the county would perform the work. However, I've recently learned through discussions with them that they no longer do that because of budget issues. And then new LARs, what questions are we considering there? Should we stop allowing the formation of LARs altogether? And if not, is there any way to ensure home buyers are aware of their maintenance obligations for the LAR? There's been a suggestion of adding having an ordinance that would require the fact that the home is served by an LAR appear on the deed so that it would show up in a title search. And then is there a point during formation of an LAR that the county requires some sort of assurance that the LAR will be maintained? So with that, the next steps that we will be doing, we'll continue our data gathering for the LAR inventory and continue our policy research and having discussions with the track. We provided a similar presentation to them on May 22nd. There was not time for in-depth conversation with them, but it brought them up to speed on the issue and the assignment you've given them. Again, I can't stress enough that we know this is a challenging issue and there's no silver bullet answer. All other Oregon counties are grappling with the same problem. So we hope that the information gathered through the inventory will allow us to come back to you with a proposal for when an LAR should be taken into the county road system. We look to you to determine if you want to include Collard Lake in that proposal or if you want to take a separate action on Collard Lake Road. And then one last point I'd like to make before discussion is we can't have this discussion in isolation. We need to consider the trade-offs and impacts to our CIP and our transportation system projects, and just thinking about if we have funding that we want to put towards LARs that are brought into the county system, that has to be a consideration when we're taking in the full picture of all of our road projects. So we've also flagged that issue for the track as they're also working on helping program our CIP, and so they are aware of it as well. And with that, questions?
12 minutes on the dot. Thank you so much. This is an excellent briefing. I know that commissioners have, at least we envision commissioners having a lot of questions and comments. I guess I'll call on the rural commissioners first, since this really hits their districts, but really hits all of ours from the graph you pointed out. But who wants to be recognized first? Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much for the hard work of putting this together, and I'm looking forward to more of the data part at the end, the one that would really state the cost for each of these roads, should they be requested to be included in a regular county road. I continue to doubt whether we should continue to allow LARs in the county system because of what we're dealing with and talking about here today. Is that one of the questions you're posing to the track committee? And so they will be considering that and then coming back with a suggestion or
Yes.
some kind of motion or that they may have approved?
One path we're evaluating is having a caveat with private. If we only have private roads and then county roads, having a caveat with a private road where they agree if a public need is identified that it be dedicated as a public road.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Commissioner Boswich.
Thank you. So yes, this is a hugely complex issue. And it does really touch all of you. In fact, we had testimony this morning about Aspen Street that is in Springfield and well inside the UGB. So there's issues. And frankly, a lot of the probably the greatest number of LARs in my district lie within the city of Eugene's UGB and Santa Clara area. So, but the ones that really matter for the rural folks are the ones that are outside those UGBs. So I'm going to talk about them in two different ways. I believe our strategy for LARs inside of UGBs should be working towards transfer of jurisdiction, not taking over maintenance responsibility. Clearly, the Aspen Street is actually bordered on one side entirely by the city of Springfield. And transferring jurisdiction there makes sense. And if it takes a capital investment to get that transfer complete to where we no longer have long-term maintenance responsibility, that may be the best action. And as I look at some of the other high parcel number streets, they're almost all within UGBs. Stark, you can go down the list. And really, we should be looking at those areas are designated to be annexed in the future anyway. And investing in taking them over as county roads does not make sense. Maybe there's a way, particularly in that case, there may be even safe routes to school money available to bring it up to standard and then turn it over to the city of Springfield without even worrying about the neighbors having island annexation issues, because it wouldn't create an island. You're just taking a street and moving the city limits from one side of the street to the other. So that's, as we look at, so I'm going to start out with that. Anything inside UGBs, the object should be jurisdictional transfer. With LARs. So I'll start with that as my beginning point, because if you do that, once you start looking at all these top 10 lists, there's one outlier, Collard Lake Road. And then when you start looking at, yes, a lot of these roads like Stark and all that have multiple parcels maybe that are connected to them, or like Aspen Street has lots of parcels around it, but it's not the only access. When you talk about LARs that are the only access for other streets, and the parcels, then including those parcels, you're up over 100 parcels. I think it's 128 with Collard Lake Road that access without any other access on a Collard Lake Road. So when you start looking at that list of, greatest number of parcels and longest length, it becomes, number one in parcels and number two in length, which just makes it, way outside the limits of what you would normally consider an LAR. In addition to that, when you start talking about 128 parcels and work out the ADT based on, AASHTO's recommendations for residential, you're well past 1,000 ADT that a local road should have, collector should have. So it's just, in so many different ways, that one stands out well outside. So I think that and there's a history with that one, a legislative history, that no other road in the county, I think, has anyone's come in and established that. There was obvious legislative intent by a previous board. Now, we're not bound by that legislative intent, but there was legislative intent described to make that a county road several decades ago. And that history's there. So that, that also makes it kind of an outlier of any other local access road. So I would propose to the board that we look at taking Collard Lake Road into county maintenance for all those reasons, but just how much of an outlier it is. In addition to the fact, it's also, the only access for a critical piece of infrastructure in the water system. When you think about tsunami escape routes from the Mercer Lake area, it's one of the few places you can gain elevation rather quickly and get out of the tsunami inundation zone. So, there's much more public function to that road than you can imagine. And yes, there will be a cost ultimately to the county, which gets me around to a question I want to ask staff right now, just so we all can understand. We keep hearing it'll cost a lot of money, $360,000 per mile of road to bring it up to county standards. How many miles of county road do we currently maintain that is not county standards? Do we know an answer to that? I know that we maintain miles of gravel road right now. Gravel road is not a county standard. Nelson Mountain Road is not a county standard road, and it runs all the way from 126 to Highway 36. We maintain that. Penn Road runs from Highway 126 to Crowvon Road. We maintain that. There's part of Hall Road that's gravel we maintain. I'm aware, at least in my district, of multiple county roads. There's a portion of Duncan Island Road that, yes, there's part that's LAR, but there's part that's county maintenance. It's gravel, And there's lots of roads in our system that probably do not meet county standards, but we've continued maintenance of those over the years and not spent the capital money to bring them to county standards today just because we happen to maintain them. So it's not like we have to get to county standards tomorrow, and that taking Collard Lake Road into the county system is not going to, currently, excuse me, I've had a problem with the allergies, and
We have a number of ailments up
Yeah.
here that I won't bore you with.
yeah.
I'm having a hard time breathing right now.
Spontaneous nosebleeds with grass pollen season seems to go along with me, so I'm going to apologize. But I think we can take it in and not commit ourselves to immediate upgrade, that we can do this in over time in our capital plan in a way that doesn't have a lot of opportunity cost. And now turning to the future LARs, there's probably still room for new LARs, but I think we need to box them in better than we have in how we set them up if we do have them, in the way that we do require deeds that have some kind of traceable declaration that you're responsible for maintenance of your road. But at the same time, as we look at some of our standards for fire access, they have to meet those standards. And I think we need to have a conversation as a board about how many parcels we're going to allow on a dead end in fire zones, and also how many parcels, how big of it, how wide and how accessible they need to be for fire. A minimum 20-foot travel lane that can bear a fire truck, and it has the proper turnarounds within 150 feet of a residence. Those are pretty tough to do with an LAR. So I think as we start talking about fire standards and forest zones, that may kind of change the whole future LAR conversation anyway. So that's a whole separate conversation for me, but breaking it down, inside UGBs, jurisdictional transfer. Outside of UGBs, unless there's some exceptional reason, like a large number of parcels with a single access, large length road like Collard Lake Road, and that legislative history, I think we kind of have to keep where we are unless we get presented with some other emergency issue, because we just don't have unlimited resources. So I would propose that we, in some kind of separate action, either today or, we can ask staff to draft the motion to take Collard Lake Road in as a county road. But that would be my direction around local access roads.
Okay, any other commissioners want to be recognized? I have some questions. Go ahead, Commissioner Farr.
I just have a couple of questions, and this is out of curiosity. And maybe you've said the answer to this. Why would a road become an LAR to begin with when it's being bulldozed years ago? Is this going to be a county road or is it going to be an LAR?
Most of the, excuse me.
I think this is a pay
It is the
grade question.
allergy season. But most of the roads that come in as LARs, they are created during a development process. Someone comes in, they want to take and divide the property, but they have to provide the access. And they, at that time, made the decision that they didn't want to build it to county standards. Even though we have many county roads that don't meet our current standards, any new ones that come in through the development process are required to take and meet our standards so that we can then maintain them at a lower cost. But developers choose not to do it as a county road because they have that option. And then after time, they go away and, new properties come along and they don't necessarily understand that this is a local access road.
So if I may, it sounds as though the initial developer saved money by not bringing it up to county standards and thereby passed along the substandard roads to the people who wittingly or unwittingly purchase the property down the road.
Right.
And a part of the discussion that I saw, and I believe it was green was the highlighted on the slide, that should we take action causing the fact that it's an LAR to be on the title so that anyone doing a title search, it becomes very evident. It's no secret that it's an LAR. And may I ask one more question? That is, have we, do we continue to allow LARs, or is there a point in time where we stopped allowing LARs?
They're still allowed. We haven't seen one for close to a decade, I would say, come through.
Okay.
Okay. So then I'll just summarize the answer. Developers save money by not bringing the road up to county standards when they develop, and then keep the savings and then pass along the whatever subsequent headaches to the future owners of the property. Okay, thank you.
And I'll just ask a few questions and make a few comments too. I think that this little exchange, it highlights my concern that the developers have come into the planning department, got approval of their thing, and one of their selling points is, well, this won't cost the county any money because they'll take care of the road. Then, years later, people buy the properties, not entirely knowing that that was said years ago, and then either they are responsible for it or they come in and ask the rest of the road users to pay for their road. So it's a really difficult thing. The first thing I would say is we should definitely stop issuing more LARs. So if for whatever reason they aren't being asked for, I would prefer to take advantage of this 10-year moment in history and say no more LARs. Second thing is that you mentioned that there's an opportunity here as you keep working through this for more data. And you heard a number of excellent suggestions, I think, from Commissioner Bozievich about what kind of data to try to acquire. I'm going to add to that list by saying I'm very interested in knowing the accidents that have occurred on LARs. If they're not maintained by the property owners, then maybe they're susceptible to accidents. I think we heard some excellent public comment from one of the folks from Colorado Lake area saying that the fire vehicle, almost fell in the ditch. Well, almost may not quite make it to the statistic of did fall into the ditch, but it's still a significant thing if there are, in fact, records of where accidents have occurred. Another thing is taking the temperature of the fire and EMT. Now, there may not be an accident, but there might be data that the fire departments and rural fire districts, and for that matter, Eugene and Springfield Fire, where there are EMT access issues or fire access that don't rise to the level of an accident, but are in fact delaying really essential public services. So separate from an accident is the actual, difficulty of getting that there. I think you heard a little bit about maybe data on the cost of the roads, both the costs of the roads that we're maintaining, but not to, quote, county standards, but are county roads, as opposed to LARs, and what would the estimated cost be for each of these segments that we have. And another thing is, we had a public commenter this morning that handed out this map of the area around Centennial Elementary School in Springfield. And this goes to a data collection problem, I think. What I'm going to highlight is the map maker put a big, rectangle around the area that they believe was the LAR. Now, let's assume that's accurate, and that it's about more than half of the length of the school, and it's fronting on the school. Now, assuming that's accurate, and again, this is a complicated topic, so it may not be. I know our county surveyor or engineer, county surveyor is here, and so he might know more about the accuracy. But let's just say that one half of the rectangle is the school, and the other half are several houses. Okay, now the commenter said there are hundreds of houses affected by this segment, and as I understand your data collection, you would only count these houses that are on the LAR, not all the houses that are pulling up to go to the soccer field, maybe one of our commissioners officiating a soccer match or playing in a soccer match, or me watching my grandchildren play the Centennial Elementary School team. I'm not in those statistics because I just drive in, and these people apparently aren't in the statistics, even though their kids probably go to these schools. This school. So the data collection on who is using the LAR isn't just, Mr. Mays lives on a road and he is one person, but what about all the people that visit him? What about the mail carrier that goes to his house? What about, so I think the data collection of who's using the LAR is a really important thing. And I know you probably don't have lots of data on this, but I think it's a challenge.
Well, one thing we are doing is collecting information on other streets that connect to that road and whether it's a through street, so
Okay.
will give us an indication of the level of use.
Good. Now, this is more of a question. You may know the answer right off the top of your head, and if not, I'd love to see it in the future. And that is, some property owners aren't aware of the legal distinction between the LAR, okay, and other types of roads. Do we presently have the right to record on that property that it is served by an LAR? Do we currently have that right to do that?
I'm
Not sure.
We can take and do some research on
I mean,
that.
like-
I know that we've used it in other instances.
Okay.
So if you have a stormwater facility on there, it's noted
Okay.
that this is a
All
stormwater
right.
facility.
What do you think that would be called? Was it a lien? Would that be called a lien? No, because we don't own the road.
It's just,
Statement,
it's a.
notice,
Yeah,
legal notice?
Yeah.
Notice is hereby given?
it's like a covenant.
Okay, covenant. So work out with legal counsel what that is called and whether we have the right to do that, and if we can just start doing that right away so that people are aware and they will become aware as they transfer their property and as people inherit the property, as people, trade it or even lease it, they'll be at least legally on notice that this is an LAR. This is not a publicly maintained road, and there should be no expectation that it should be a public finance road because the previous property owners didn't want it to be a public road. Okay, and then another big area for me on this whole LAR thing is what I would call policy options. Now, we aren't the only county in Oregon, so there's 35 other counties out there. Some have snow, some have rain, some have both. We have both. And so there's 35 other counties out there, and I would love to see a kind of a grouping of policy, like some counties do this, what we might call option A. Some counties do this. We're in that group. Some counties do this, so that we can see how other counties have been dealing with this problem over time, and what they're currently doing. Maybe like a matrix, no more LARs, lots of LARs, whatever. And then finally, the thing that we're really up here for, I think, when we break down our responsibilities, is we're really here to help people. And public safety is a big part for me of helping people. And so even though I'm very kind of data-driven on, well, who's using these roads and making sure that we have options for how to pay to make sure they're maintained, I'm also very interested in, let's say, overriding that with public safety. So the elementary school example to me, or the Collard Lake Road example with the fire vehicle or EMT vehicle that can't get through because of the LAR, then to me, although I'm dominantly in favor of people taking care of their responsibilities when they acquired this property, and I'm willing to override that in cases where there's a public safety, like those school children over in Springfield, or getting fire and EMT vehicles to larger numbers of people. So I don't know how to pull that in. I'll just call it Pete's public safety option. But I think we should be mainly data-driven on this, and yes, there's some override for it in cases, but I mean, really, we need to find, and I think Commissioner Bozovich is on to a real good topic here with comparing what we do. Now, Duncan Island Road, I'm pretty familiar with that. I went on a road trip with the Public Works Department and went all up and down Duncan Island Road. For those of you who don't know, it's near the Siuslaw River, near Mapleton and Florence, Cushman. And that road is a great example of, hey, it's a gravel road. To the person walking or driving along that road, they see it as a gravel road, whether it's an LAR or whether it's a county road. Looks the same to me. I'm not an engineer, but it looks the same to me that the county is maintaining it up to the point that it becomes an LAR, and then the property owner's maintaining it. So to me, learning about what other counties do may also be an insight to, as that is an example where the public is paying to maintain the county road part at the level we choose to maintain it. No superhighway, no bike path, no pavement, maybe some ditches, maybe some burning of the vegetation along the road, and then the property owner does the same thing on their side of the thing. So to me, this is a great discussion, and I'll turn it over to anybody else that wants to make any comments. Okay, I think we're done. Are we done, or do you want to say something?
Pete always has to look at me because it always takes me so long to formulate my thoughts. This is.
Are you ready to make a comment? Yes.
This has been an education to me too, because it seems to me that everything. I'm surprised that much of what has been discussed is not already in place. Honestly, I'm surprised that people don't have covenants that understand exactly what their situation and responsibilities are. I'm surprised that this county has not taken a position to stop LARs from occurring, and that developers have to pay the price to provide, to do county road. So this is one of those wonderful opportunities where I agree with virtually everything that Commissioner Bozovich said, and I agree with practically everything that Commissioner Sorensen said. And it sure seems to me that we ought to just solve this darn thing. I mean, we ought to just get in front of it and solve it. And I'm looking forward to, and I did not realize to the depth that I do now how much of an outlier Collard Lake Road is. So thank you for pushing the discussion. And I really hope that this can occur quicker than most planning processes occur, so that maybe we can figure out where we want to go and give you some really concrete direction. So thank you very much.
And maybe I could ask, when do you think it would be possible for you to come back? And you're not going to be held to this answer, so, just give it in months. And so Mr. Hurley and Mr. Mokrzyjski and the agenda team can get a flavor for what you're thinking. Are we talking months, years, or decades?
Months. Actually, I think we're actually on the schedule for September. August.
Oh, okay. Less than 2 months. Yeah, Commissioner
Good question.
Bozovich and then
He's got my
Commissioner
question.
Farr.
Yeah.
No, I
With the exception of board order for Collard Lake Road, is that going to take months to get to a board order for that, or is that something that can take a month or so? I mean, that seems like that, we've talked, it seems to be that there's consensus, at least on the board, to handle that as a separate issue and go ahead and make the exception and take that into the system.
Well, let me jump in here real quick. So we still have that little piece that we
Just
need to
let
acquire.
everybody know who you are, so everybody watching can.
I'm Michael J. Blame. I'm the county surveyor. To answer your question, you might remember that the board just directed staff to acquire that last piece of right-of-way. And again, with the projects that we have going and stuff right now, it's scheduled, but we haven't even begun the work. So we would want to acquire that piece of right-of-way so that we could bring a full board packet to the board, accepting all of those acquisitions that were acquired in the 1980s, plus that one piece, have it all accepted as county road.
Okay, my only concern is that's where we were in 1976.
Understand?
And I don't want to have this fail because we had direction from the board to take it in as a county property, and staff goes back and doesn't complete the right-of-way acquisition. And we've talked before that there are county roads that don't have 50-foot right-of-ways. So if there's a piece that has a little hole taken out of it by the corner of a property, we need to look at that. So I guess my concern would be to I'd like to have a report back at some point where you are with the right-of-way acquisition, so the board, a definitive date that's coming back, and not have it. What happened last time is it just kind of died in Public Works, and the board didn't follow up. And I want to make sure we don't repeat that mistake from the 70s. So just, if I can get some assurance that.
Yeah, could we get that as part of your report back? Can you work with the folks with the county engineer and coordinate that so that this is not lost and that we do complete that? And if your report is, well, we're starting on it and we haven't finished it, that's what your report is, but at least we can avoid the problem that apparently occurred before.
Yes, I'll direct staff to start that work, and we'll give you a full report when we meet in August.
Okay.
And we'll have a better idea timeline. Hopefully, it's not an issue, and we can acquire that piece, and we can move forward. The board did give us eminent domain authority, so if we have to do a taking, we can do that, so.
Okay. Very good. Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I was right. I anticipated Commissioner Bozovich's question. It was regarding Collard Lake Road. But I'm going to use a quote, and I'm going to use this quote very, very often. I just wrote it down today. It was Commissioner Bernie's quote. We ought to just solve this. So, thank you. So I agree. We have an issue here, and if we had a fire event on Collard Lake Road between now and the end of this year, we would regret the fact that we hadn't taken care of it quicker. But I think you've heard the urgency, and you've heard that a timeline is that we're looking for a timeline on it. So, thank you very much. And Rachel, thank you very much.
Thank you so
Good to work
much.
with
We'll
you.
see you back here and stay in touch with our agenda team. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go back to our agenda. I have everything down to 11 done. So I guess I'll call on Mr. Mokrzyjski on item 11A, County Administration Announcements.
Mr. Chair, I don't have anything critical. As I mentioned to you at the break, I did want to have Keir Miller here to introduce him as our new land management division manager. The schedule today just didn't quite allow for that. So we'll do that at a future meeting, but I just want to make sure that the board is aware of his appointment, and you all have worked with him, so you have some familiarity, but we like to bring forward new appointments to key positions that the board works with regularly. So we'll do that at the next board meeting. Other than that, I don't have anything pressing, so if you have questions for me, happy to answer those. Otherwise, I'll let you move through your business.
I do have a question regarding the analysis of the vote on the courthouse bond and a report back either from the public opinion firm that did the analysis of how the public viewed it ahead of the campaign, and maybe a map or tabulation of where the different parts of the county, maybe by district, by city, and really get a more of an understanding, not only for the Board of Commissioners, but also for the public in terms of what we know about the vote, other than the obvious percentages. But, I just want to get more of a post-election assessment that could be helpful as we consider options in the future. So
Yeah.
I kind of made that almost like a board work session. I don't really imply I want that, because I think that internally you should be doing that anyway, and maybe you've already done it or some of it. So I think I just have it as, report back under county administration announcements when you've had time to do that.
Yeah, actually, I appreciate the comment, Mr. Chair, and, I think it actually would be a good item to have as a work session. So what I'd ask is, why don't I take that to staff and we can have some conversations. We are looking at conducting a survey of voters rather soon, so that we can actually get some information that's fresh from voters to understand, if of those folks who voted no, why was that, and what would have helped them to get to yes. Analyze the precinct. We did just, the election was certified, I think, earlier last week, and so we do have the precinct results that we can analyze and kind of understand.
You can group the precincts then.
Exactly, and what we've talked about doing is working with our GIS division to do some mapping of, where did we get plus 60%, where do we get 50 to 60%, where do we get below 50%, so that we can sort of understand where those groupings of voters are and maybe where we need to pay a little more attention with messaging. We've also talked about doing some focus grouping. So there really has been, you may have seen the op-ed that was submitted by the sheriff, the DA, presiding judge, and Commissioner Bozovich, that kind of did a little bit of an outline and talking about how, the county really wants to listen to voters. We appreciate the process that we went through. We did get 42% support, so that was good. Now the question, but not good enough. So the question is, how do we get that additional 9% of voters to support this? So the answer to your question is yes, there's work happening to begin to analyze and understand that, and I think it makes a lot of sense to do, if the board is open to this, to actually do a work session on a Wednesday morning where we could dive into it and have that conversation, as opposed to me just reporting to you what our findings might be.
Yep. Okay. Any other questions for the county administrator during the announcements portion of this meeting? Okay. I don't see our county council here, so we won't have county council announcements. I don't believe we are doing an executive session today. I believe we are doing one tomorrow, and we're having the work session on the renewal of purchased insurance policies, and we're having the executive session on the county performance auditors annual performance evaluation. There was a request to postpone until October or November the county council matter, which I think we'll go ahead and schedule for. That's the request, I think, of Commissioner Buck and also Ms. Holmes. So
You say that was a request of Ms. Holmes?
I'm not quite clear on that, so I'll ask Commissioner.
When we were chatting about trying to get our employees' performance evaluations on the right cycle, because we know that we've been tardy on getting those done, looking at the correct cycle in which to do those, county councils was normally should be scheduled for the first week of November, which is just 4 short months away. It seems more efficient to do them together so that we can then start getting everybody on a regular performance evaluation schedule. I didn't have that particular information before today's agenda was posted online, or I could have talked about that a little bit sooner. And so, our director is working really hard to get those on the right schedules. And so this would be our first one to start getting on the schedule. It's just more efficient to instead do one now, another one in 4 months. We might as well just do them together and then start getting people on the right schedules.
So we might have to ask Sebastian this question because it would be a conflict for Steve to answer it in some ways. But we have contracts with all 3 of our employees that require annual review. Can we contractually skip a review and wait till the next year? I don't think the answer to that question is yes. So I would, before I'm willing to say, okay, let's just move it to coincide with when it should be, we've missed one. And we have a contract that says we're supposed to review annually, and if there's a satisfactory review, that moves up a step in the pay scale. All that stuff is supposed to happen. It's supposed to, and actually would be retroactive to the anniversary date, if I understand the contract. But I think I would prefer to have HR and maybe one of the staff members that is not involved in the, has a direct conflict to give us an opinion on that before we just willingly move that. So I would hope maybe we can get that answer by tomorrow before the agenda item.
Well, why don't we have them report on that after the item 1A before our executive session, so that we'll have Sebastian or Ms. Holmes or both be able to give us their views on that. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Okay. So now we are, I think, ready to recess.
Do you want to do Commissioner?
Oh, excuse me. We've done all of those items. Ready to move on to item 16A, which is our county commissioners' business, and that is 16A, our announcements. Do any commissioners have any announcements?
I have a fun one.
Okay.
It's fun for me anyway. I've been asking people today if they could recognize the tie that I'm wearing and why I might be wearing this particular tie today. And some people have said, well, it looks like a soccer ball markings, but they're not sure what the rest of it is. Well, the World Cup is happening right now, and we're in the group stage. And there are 2 particular teams that I pay attention to. Of course, the USA, who is the perennial World Cup champions, but also the team that is represented by this flag right here, which is the St. George's Cross of England. So I wear this for the English women's soccer team, which is going to come out of the group stage into the elimination phase. So that's why I'm wearing the tie. Thank you.
Okay. Any other announcements? Okay. Oh, go ahead.
A quick note, and I was trying to look up the details real quick. There is a meeting Thursday evening on the 20th down in Lorraine about the territorial highway improvements now that we've taken over jurisdiction of that southern portion of territorial highway. And unfortunately, I won't be able to attend because I had that planned trip to Montana, and they set the meeting, without looking at my calendar, which is just fine because Public Works was more concerned about getting the meeting notice out and a proper place to hold it. But if folks out there in the South Lane County area there in Lorraine and Ham Road, that area that where they're going to be doing some major work to territorial are interested, they can drop me a note and get that meeting. Oh, hold on. Devin is texting me 6 to 8 p.m. at Lorraine Grange. So at the Grange Hall. So at 6 o'clock at the Lorraine Grange Hall, there'll be a meeting on Territorial Highway for all you folks down there. And also for you folks maybe that don't live down there but like to go to King Estates Winery or bicycle that section of roadway. I know there's other interested parties outside of the residents in that area. Maybe even some of the log truck drivers might be interested in commenting on what we decide to do with that section of roadway that they call Rocky Point. And it's called Rocky Point for a reason. When you drive on it, it's rocky. So, I mean, literally. So that's coming up on the 20th. There's also a meeting coming up in Florence while I'm going to be in Montana on the North Jetty Park site that folks in the Florence area may be interested in. And I believe that's actually been posted on the Florence, Oregon Facebook page and the Let's Talk Florence Facebook page. So if you're interested, you can kind of look there for the details on that North Jetty meeting. Okay. That's going to be at the Siuslaw Valley Fire District building.
I'll attend that.
Okay, anything else before we move on?
Mr. Chair, I was remiss in one thing. Linda Perrine, in her testimony today, suggested that I always talk about my grandchildren. I haven't done it yet today. My 18-month-old grandbaby is visiting me from Ohio, and will be flying home after today. With his parents, by the way. I think they came with him anyway. So I have a full PowerPoint presentation, so anybody who wants to stay after the public testimony tonight, I have a full PowerPoint picture presentation we can show. So, thank you.
Very good.
So you'll be showing us PowerPoints of your grandchildren the last day they're here?
They'll be asleep by the time the meeting is over tonight.
So I believe we are now ready for item 16B. So at this time, I'll call up item 16B. This is our agenda team requests / work session requests. I'll just report the agenda team is working our way through the various agenda team requests and work session requests, and Ms. Jones has a complete and updated list, which commissioners can review. Are there any other agenda team requests or work session requests? Yep.
So like I said earlier, I withdrew my motion because I think there's a better vehicle to express our concern about community corrections funding and some of the other funding decisions that the legislature's been making in subcommittees. And I would request, with the support of the board, that we direct Mr. Kyler to draft a letter expressing our concern and the possibility that the funding levels for the community corrections may trigger Lane County to opt out of providing parole and probation services, and conversely may extremely impact our ability to provide the justice reinvestment, restorative justice projects we've been doing. So I think Mr. Kyler can put that in a way that is appropriate, and I think it should be addressed to the co-chairs of the Full Ways and Means Committee.
I'm curious, there's a lot of labor management component to this. If we were to give up our parole and probation and send it back to the state, which they were doing prior to Senate Bill 1145, 1995. And so would bringing in the concerns of parole and probation be a part of this, or do you view it as we should write the letter and then get feedback later from the people? I mean, don't you think it would be good to have them involved in writing the letter?
I think putting them on notice that we believe it triggers the opt-out level of funding, and that we may exercise that opt-out is what we're looking for, because what I really want is for them to pay attention to the time study that was required by statute. You know, they completely ignored what it really cost. You know, what they based their funding on was $11 and change per day per person under supervision. And what the time study said was it actually cost $14 and something. And they shorted the system $50 million. in addition to taking back $4.5 million from counties and then creating a system of fees that took another $3.5 million back from counties to pay for the state circuit court's IT needs. So just on top of all that. So I think we need to strongly express our concerns to the co-chairs of the full Ways and Means that they need to go back and relook at that portion of the public safety budget.
Just for some historic interest, when Senate Bill 1145 was being worked on by the legislature, I was in on 30 or 40 hours of hearings on it, and at the end, I decided I was going to vote no because I didn't think there was enough guarantee to the counties that they would be able to financially afford this subject. And the governor increased the budget for this at the time and persuaded the no votes on the first round to vote yes. So I ended up voting for Senate Bill 1145 on its final passage. And of course, there's been a lot of water over the dam since then. But now we're back to what some of us predicted, and that is this is going to be a mandate on local government that's going to be difficult to meet. The only part I would probably amend on your letter at the time we work on it, if there's support, is I would like to get the perspective of the parole and probation, because our parole and probation is very innovative and really ahead of the curve and are doing a lot of good things, but they can't do it without the money, and I'm sure they would like to include a paragraph or two about needing the money. But I also don't want to say that we've made the decision to opt out. I think that's premature, so.
That's why I chose the words may opt.
May opt out, okay.
What I heard were the words, it may trigger our opt.
Yeah. So I think that's fair, and I think it's good to ask the Legislative Assembly and put them on notice that we are concerned about it. So I will be a second person, Commissioner. But we do need 3, so let me see if there's 3 people that want to move that. Okay, very good. There's more than 3. So let's do that as an agenda team request, and so we'll have Mr. Kyler work on that. Commissioner Buck.
I've been getting some email traffic about the McKinsey Discovery Center wanting to come back and give us a presentation, maybe about 15 minutes or so. It's my understanding that they did this a year ago when they were starting their project, and so they want to come and give us an update. So I just want to make sure, I doubt we have anybody that's opposed to that. I just want to make sure that that's good, and then we can put it on the calendar as soon as we can get that in.
This was pretty
Okay.
exciting.
That sounds good. I certainly think we should have that presentation from the McKenzie Discovery Center. Do we have other commissioners? Okay, very good. So we'll put that down as a work session request, I guess, to have them come in. So minimal work on the part of county, but have them come in and make their presentation on it. Are there any other work session requests or agenda team requests? Commissioner Farr.
Agenda team request, thank you. During the discussion of the budget today, we talked about a 6-month review of the Association of Oregon and California Counties. I'd like to request the agenda team place that on the schedule for sometime in December, which is 6 months from now.
Just a conversation. Would that not precipitate earlier than that, some work sessions on that topic?
It may, in fact, but the discussion, I'm just hearkening back to the discussion that we had, that a 6-month review. So whatever it takes to get us to a 6-month review, which would be sometime, well, today's the 18th, so 6 months from today is 18th of December.
Yeah, go ahead.
I thought I'd raise my hand rather than interrupt you, Commissioner. I apologize. I think in order to do that, or in order to, whenever that review occurs, I think that will require perhaps more than one work session. I think Mr. Kyler wants to provide a work session in terms of the background to all of that he hasn't had a chance to do because he's been so busy in Salem. I think that it might even require two. So as long as that's on the radar, otherwise we won't make that date.
And thank you
that
for
date,
that point, Commissioner. So if we take the 6 month and then work backward from there to see
Reverse
what work
engineer
sessions
it.
need to be.
It might be 7 months, it might be 8 months, but the point being, we want to work toward getting there because I think that motion failed. And I think it was we said am I wrong?
Yeah,
It was a
it
motion
failed
to do it.
because one of the objections was the budget wasn't the right place to make that, to place that.
So as long as we get these work sessions going, we'll get there.
So my request then is by December 18th.
Work session.
So let me be clear, what, Commissioner Farr, are you asking to be considered as a work session?
A review of OACC, which would include information provided by staff at whichever point we need to have the information provided, that would give us a balanced understanding of the benefits, the performance, and the negatives of being a member agency of OACC.
Okay, so by mid-December, have a work session where Lane County staff would come in and they would review the Lane County membership in the Association of O&C Counties.
And I would presume at that time we'd discuss
Okay,
members.
is that, did everybody agree to that? Yeah, okay, very good. So, Mr. Mokryski, you can ask Ms. Jones and Mr. Kyler to be ready for a work session sometime between now and mid-December, so that we can have Mr. Kyler report on the AOCC to the board. Okay? Very good. Any other work session requests or work session or agenda team requests? Okay, so I think we are nearing our recess or our recess. There's no executive session today, so I think I'll call on Mr. Mokryski for any review of assignments, and then we will recess or adjourn. Forgot what it says on the agenda, until 5:30 in Springfield. So at this time, I'll call on Mr. Mokryski for a review of assignments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have 4 items. First was the one that I mentioned, Commissioner Sorensen, you brought this up. While I didn't see head nods, I also presume, and I was supportive of this, that we come back with an update or potentially a work session to review the results of the courthouse bond measure with some additional information. So we're just gonna, if that's all right, we're gonna add that as an assignment. Commissioner Bozovich's request to send a letter to the legislature regarding probation, state funding. Was there another piece to that I missed? I thought.
You mean the Cottage Grove?
No, the opt-out.
Yeah, the
Oh,
opt-out.
the opt-out. Mr. Kyler is going to write a letter, a draft letter for
Well, if someone write
consideration
the
by the
letter, I mean,
board.
yeah.
And consult with parole and probation and direct it to the co-chairs of Ways and Means, and the board will consider that at an upcoming board meeting.
Yeah, consult with parole and probation was the other piece. Commissioner Buck's request to have a presentation from the McKenzie Discovery Center, and then Commissioner Farr's request for a 6-month review of our participation with the Association of Oregon and California Counties by mid-December of this year. So those 4 items.
Very good.
Is anything?
Anything further from commissioners?
We're going to work on the CHC item. I don't know if that's an assignment necessarily. I mean, you gave direction to staff to continue to work on the CHC item with the questions and additional information that you wanted. I don't know if you want that to be memorialized.
Why
as
don't
a
we do that? Yeah, because I think we want to keep that in the forefront of the agenda team's scheduling so that we can make sure that it does occur and it's.
And Collard Lake Road and the LARs, I think, is all.
Yeah, Collard Lake Road and the LARs would be in that same category where they said they'd come back in 2 months.
Okay, so we'll add the CHC's, this potential for a new FQHC in Cottage Grove and the work on that and the additional information come back to the board. Oh, God, I just blanked. What was the
Collard
last
Lake
one?
Road.
Collard Lake Road and LARs that's going to come back to. Sorry, we're not done yet today either.
No, we're not done.
And then it does say on the agenda, Mr. Chair, adjournment. You obviously have
Wishful
the,
thinking.
no, I'm sorry, that's tomorrow. I'm wrong on that. It does say adjourn on the agenda today.
Probably should say recess.
Should
but
say
that's okay.
recess, because you're recessing till
So Commissioner
tonight.
Bernie, you wanted to make a comment?
Yeah, I think senility is contagious. It just escaped my mind, too.
I was going to say that, but I'd forgotten.
You forgot, that's a good one.
I have a senior moment.
There really was another
Too young.
thing.
You were going to say, and it was really important.
It was very important. And I hope before we adjourn, it comes back, but if it doesn't, it will by 5:30 this evening.
Was it about getting solar on the new Cottage Grove facility building?
Well, obviously, I want that, but no, that was not it. By the way, had the court bond passed, there would have been a $2 million solar array
Wow.
on that courthouse,
Wow.
but that's here nor there.
Yep.
So I apologize. I thought you were forgetting something that was very important, and I forgot what it was.
If that's the case, I'm sure you'll remind me.
So unless there's objection, we're going to now recess the Board of Commissioners meeting until 5:30. I'll remind the board and the public that that will be at the Ken Long Room of Willamette Lane's facility at 250 South 32nd Street in Springfield. 5:30, we're going to have the public comment. Following public comment, we will have the commissioner remonstrance. Any concerns that the board has about the public comment? I was planning to give everybody 3 minutes, but I wanted to kind of sense from the board of how long we thought this would go and how long we are willing to have it go. So 90 minutes, 30 minutes, 60 minutes,
They originally said 9.
90 minutes was the original.
90 minutes. So is that inclusive of our comments or not?
That was inclusive of comments, right?
Okay, so I'm getting 80 minutes for public comment and 10 minutes for commissioners or more? Okay,
I never really got a chance to even respond to this morning, so.
yeah, exactly.
Linda Perrine, I had a chance to respond to that.
All right, so at this time then, we will be recessed until 5:30 PM. Thank you very much.